And we're live. Hi, everybody. Yeah, today is a strange live stream. Hi. We have Kate Holland joining us from New York, from New York Book Fair. And we also have Ian Khan in well, a bit later today. So, yeah. And the object you see behind Kate is something we plan to discuss today. Well, we planned to discuss 2 weeks ago, but we switched it to today. So we'll see how it goes. There may be some background sound because, well, Kate is at a fair, and that's that's how it is. But yeah. Anyway.
It's the buzz of New York, is what you're
Yeah,
hearing.
yeah, exactly. So Kate Holland, British bookbinder, Pasha Voronin, my co-host, and I'm Stepan Chizhov, and this is iBookBinding's live stream. As usual, I invite everybody who's watching this to post their comments, to share their opinions and thoughts, and maybe some questions to one of our guests, either to Kate or Ian, and we'll see how it goes. Also, if you'd like to share from where you are joining this live stream, from which country, town, city, village, whatever, please do that. It's always interesting to see what's happening out there. And also there are some useful links in the description of the video, links to Kate's profile, Instagram profile, and probably website. I'm not sure. And also links to our social accounts, our Patreon account, which is which is something that allows us to continue with our live streams and podcast. And please consider supporting us on Patreon. Pledges start with only £1 or dollar or euro or whatever per month. So that's probably not that much. But yeah, anyway, you can subscribe even without any pledges. So,
and if 1.5 million of you join us,
Where's
we'll be
Ian?
able to bid for this wonderful creation.
yeah, that's the idea. Just to get 1.5 million subscribers on Patreon to buy out this wonderful binding that sits behind Kate.
Ian, you're live on video, by the way.
Yeah. Hi, Ian.
Consultation.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was at the shadow show.
So
I think we're live. So hi everybody.
yeah.
Apologies for sunglasses. I had a bit of a meeting with the pavement. And here's Ian. We're on his stand. And we're going to have a look. I'll have a chat with you first about the binding, maybe, and then I can hand you over to Ian and he can show you through some of his treasures. Would that be a good plan?
Yeah, that's a great plan. Thanks a lot. And thanks for both of you for finding time, to join us today. So, we talked about this binding a while ago during one of our previous talks. I don't remember, was it live or was it recorded? That it doesn't matter. We discussed. I think you were connecting us with from your studio, from your workshop, and showed us around. But you mentioned that there may be this interesting project in the future. So it was idea.
It's been 3 years in the making.
Yeah. It was. I think it was on the idea then, or something like that. So how did it start?
It started as a commission from Paul Suntup at Dragon Rebound. Well, he's also Paul Suntup, and he came to me and he said he wanted to do a signed first edition of Breakfast at Tiffany's and set it with diamonds. So I'm like, okay, I can help you with that.
Yeah, of course. That's Monday. That's just Monday for me.
Yeah, normal everyday telephone call. And so I had the idea, and then I came up with several designs, and we settled on one. And it's mainly it's like the streets of London are paved with gold. This is the streets of New York paved with platinum and diamonds. So it's a love story to New York. trying to get away from the film and all the very well-known imagery that we know from that. You know, the girl with the silhouette with the cigarette holder. I want to definitely move away from that one. And so hopefully, you know, I'm celebrating New York, celebrating luxury, celebrating Tiffany's with there's the blue sapphire on 5th and 57th, I think it is off the top of my head. But then also I was like, how am I going to display this, make it a book object as much as a book, so that not something that just goes on a shelf and you just see the spine of it. How to display, because as a book design bookbinder, I'm interested in how on earth people see books in the round, you know. So that I want them to see the whole of the outside, but I want them to see the doublures and the edges and the M-bands and the whole thing. So my son and I came up with the design for the glass plinth, which is a way of supporting it, the book, and holding it and keeping it secure, but keeping it, you know, free. So, you know, it's a bird. There's the bird cage. So that's a sort of repeating motif in the book. Holly Golightly buys a vintage bird cage for her man and her friend, and it's about you know, capturing women, releasing them, escaping domestic servitude, sexual freedom, female emancipation. That's what Tiffany, Breakfast at Tiffany's, for me, is all about. And so the birdcage was a really important motif as well. And then we had to make the Louis Vuitton trunk as well, but which we haven't. I didn't have we couldn't afford the business class seat for the trunk as well, so that had to stay at home. But yeah, we've got, you know, enough of it here, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been exciting to bring it back to New York.
Pasha, maybe you'll we'll switch to screen sharing so that you'll be able to show some photos.
Are these the photos? Could you comment?
Yeah, so these are this is the original set of illustrations done by David Atty, who was the photographer that Truman Capote commissioned to illustrate Breakfast at Tiffany's. It was originally going to appear in Harper's Bazaar, but the publishers decided it was too risque. It was basically a woman living, you know, sex for money, and also open homosexuality. And so I think they pulled it, and so it was then picked up by Esquire magazine. But none of these, only one of the images was published with the story. So this one, in fact, good timing. So this is the one that is seen in Esquire. The rest of them have never been published in print in full until now. And so I got permission from his son to reproduce them. And I think they're just really, really beautiful. It's a photo montage technique, which he apparently discovered by accident, layering negatives one over the other to achieve this sort of rather ethereal, mysterious effect. But I just think they're really, these two ones with the pigeons I've used as the M papers for the book.
This one is amazing. I've never seen these images, even though I'm obsessed with the book. Yeah. It's a really interesting story. Thank you.
So for me, it's a really important sort of historical document as much as, you know, being a slightly over the top book binding. But I think they're really, really beautiful. So there's a portfolio of the images that fits into the door of the trunk as well. There's the bird cage. And that's actually Truman Capote. That's not part of the illustrations, but that is Capote, photographed by Atty. So they were friends in Brooklyn in the 50s. That's the original Esquire magazine layout with that one photograph. Mm-hmm. Capote, I've got actually facsimiles of the letters that Capote wrote to Esquire magazine saying how he wouldn't sell them the story if they didn't use these images. But this was the only one that the one that they agreed on.
It's really difficult to believe these are from the 50s. It's not
I know they feel so modern, don't they?
Yes.
It's also a bit strange to look from the modern times at these photos and just try to understand why weren't they published then, because, well,
why could they pause? I mean,
still, you know, well, okay. I'm glad that that our society changed so much since then. There are still a lot of things to change and to be changed, but I'm glad that we're not living in 1950s anymore. So I understand it was a group effort to make the whole object.
Yes. So, well, it was sort of down to me to research and find the right craftspeople to work with. This is Dom Parrish, who I've worked with before, and he made a really good cabinet maker. So I went to him for the bird cage and the trunk. But because it felt really important, you know, it's a collaboration between several craftspeople, but making sure that you get the best people in their field. Feels a long time ago, these images.
Well, if it was a project 3 years in making, that's definitely.
So, is this COVID times?
Sorry?
Is this during COVID? If it was 3 years ago?
No, it'd be just after COVID.
Just after, yeah.
Yeah.
Remember that? Remember that?
Remember COVID? I know. I still see, you know, people on the subway with masks, and it's feels still quite real.
I'll read a couple of comments from our viewers. We have David Hennington from Ottawa, Canada, and Anna Fioriani from Brazil, Rio de Janeiro. Nice to have you here. Thanks for joining today. If anybody else decides to share from where they are joining us, that would be great. If you have any questions about the project in general, about some aspects of the binding, please post them, and we'll pass them to Kate, and hopefully Kate will be able to answer them.
I'll do my best.
Yeah. So what else? Who else?
This is making the wax. So we first made a 3D printed version of the glass plinth, which is then made in wax, which is then set in clay, and the wax is melted away, and then that leaves you a void into which you pour the glass. I'm not an expert on these things. I don't use that as to-do instructions. And then it's highly polished, but we kept the top and the bottom matte, so that there weren't too many reflections. Otherwise, there's a lot of light bouncing off too many areas. So we needed to think about. We wanted to make it feel airy, but it also needs to be, you know, a solid piece. It's quite hard. There was a lot of discussion about this, and about but Jade, who's working here, she is an exceptional glass casting artist.
Yeah,
luckily from my town.
When I saw the plinths in the beginning, I wanted to ask you how was it made, and well, you just answered that it was cast glass. So that's.
I think there's 3 pigs of glass in there, 3 or 4 pigs. So you can see the bubbles there. That's sort of where the each pig meets each other. So it's not one solid piece. It's 3 or 4 bricks of glass that get put in and then melted down into each other. But I like the bubbles. I like, we were trying to discuss, can we have more bubbles or less bubbles? And we decided some bubbles.
We have
good middle ground.
We have Glenn Malkin on Facebook joining us.
Hi, Glenn.
Hi, Kate. To what extent did you discuss the design with the jewelers before you proposed it to ensure it could be achieved by them?
Well, I'm slightly one of those people who has an idea and thinks, well, we'll be able to work it out somehow. That's doable. So yeah, we agreed the design, and then I went to the jewelers. It's probably the wrong way around. Probably would have been better to have talked to the jewelers first. So the book that I've got here now is a prototype in silver and cubic zirconia, because I can't afford 30 carats of diamonds.
That was my next question.
And so we went through a huge process of working how on earth to set the grid So it was in the end, it was a sheet of silver that was then micro water jetted out the spaces. We were going to do laser cutting, but the silver was too reflective and it was going to break the laser. And then we were going to do water jetting, but that wasn't fine enough. And so then we did micro water jetting, because the problem is also you need to be able to get the metal that's fallen through into the machine back, because would have been in platinum, it'd be about 10 grams worth of platinum just dropped into the bottom of the machine. So we needed to find the right guys who would be happy to do this. And yeah, but I think we've actually now, having made this silver version, the platinum version is actually going to be made with individual wires. I think we've decided that's the the simpler way forward with such an expensive metal. But it was an interesting process, and I'm very grateful.
But I assume silver and zirconia are still not that cheap. I mean,
It's not been a cheap process to get to this prototype stage. I'm very thankful that Paul was the one bankrolling it and then we hope to hopefully we'll sell it, and someone will have it, take it back to their new home, and we'll make it, and then it will go back to the new home. It's been a really fun process.
Yes, sorry. That sort of relates to another question I wanted to ask. I think Ian posted on Facebook that the book is being passed through the customs or whatever, and how does this process go when you bring such an expensive book with you and the customs and everything? How does it work?
So what I did was get a carnet, which is a means of importing and exporting goods for exhibitions. I'm not planning on selling this particular book. So there is a agreement between governments that you can import and export stuff without paying customs duty, as long as you don't then sell it in the country. So I've had to make a promise that I'll bring it back to the UK. Yeah. And then when it sells, then we'll deal with that at a later stage. But yeah, I wanted a business class seat for it. That would have been much more fun. But anyway, we had to have a special flight case made for the birdcage, and then the book came in my hand luggage, and the plinth came in my husband's hand luggage.
Nice. So anyone who plans to do something like that in the future, they should get their husband with them, and that's a mandatory, thing to do, to have additional hand luggage for something like that. Were there any, interesting challenges during the bookbinding process?
The main thing was getting the boards to stay absolutely dead flat, that there was no how boards warp with the change in humidity. So they've actually got a sheet of aluminium within the board to keep it stable. And then there's the grooves where the streets are sculpted with layers of paper, and then they were covered. So it's a Bradell binding essentially. So the boards were made separate from the spine, and then they were drilled. So they're covered in leather and then blind tooled, and then the drilled through, and the grid was actually the grid was made first, and then I made the boards to fit the grid. And then they were sort of laser welded within drilled through the boards with pins, and then laser attached.
Did you have to basically engineer and invent the whole process yourself? I mean, who do you consult on a project like that?
No one. I mean, I don't know. I just have this sort of modus operandi of thinking, well, I want to do that, and then working out how on earth you're going to do it. And there's obviously the jeweled bind. I was looking at all the jeweled bindings.
Pasha, would you please switch off screen sharing?
They had a very different method.
Yeah, sorry, Kate. Stop sharing. I'll try to switch to something else, because Ian is trying to show us something there, and I want to, please continue talking, and I will
Yeah.
try to fix everything.
Okay. Where was I? So yeah, once the grid was laser attached to the boards, it was then infilled and attached to the spine, and then the doubleurs put down. So yeah, it was a interesting engineering process.
What do you mean laser attached?
It's probably like, well, I don't know, to be honest, because I didn't do it. I sent the boards to the jewelers, and they fixed it on, and so it's secure, but it's in about 20 different points. Behind the grid, there's pins which are then drilled through the boards. Fixed.
Yeah, Pasha, you'll have to keep up with the
Yeah.
questions because
So,
I need to do something else.
So last time when you could not yet tell us what the project is, you were mentioning certain parallels between it and the famous skull by a certain young British artist.
Yes. So
Could you
actually
elaborate?
the jewelers that I used to make the prototype are not Bentley and Skinner, because budgets. But Bentley and Skinner are making the real thing, and I went to them because of their reputation, and they're just happy to help and to do things that are outside the box. They do a lot of work with individual artists, enabling their dream visions to be realized. So they were definitely the right people to go to. They have a huge amount of experience with these sort of crazy ideas.
And you mentioned you looked at other bejeweled bindings. Are there contemporary examples? I know of much older ones from early 20th century, but nothing done in
I
the
can't
recent
think.
years.
There's a few. I think I've seen a couple. I want to say David Esselmont had done a binding with some diamonds set into it. I think it was a Gaylord Chanelec text of New York, but not many. And you see the odd one with sort of like one or two diamonds stuck in. But I haven't yet worked out what the process is. I think the Zangorski ones had sort of claws to set in under the leather, and then the each stone is then set into that claw. But I haven't taken apart a Zangorski jeweled binding to find out how it's done. But I'm sure there are people who will know exactly how it's done.
They're still active. Couldn't you just call and ask?
Well, Shepherds have got all the Zangorski, all their drawings and files and so like the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, they've got all the original drawings, and so yeah, I could go and check it out, but I don't know. I think I'm like, well, I can do it. It's a very arrogant way of working, rather than going to ask somebody for their help.
I wanted to ask you about the. Let me change again to. Yeah, so that everybody sees the cage. Thanks a lot, Ian, for showing us that. I wanted to ask you about.
I figured I should be useful.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. About
Put you to work soon. Don't worry.
this aluminum plate, and were there any considerations, conservation wise? What adhesives did you use to put it all together?
Well, aluminium is, as I understand it, aluminium is quite stable. Is in terms of sort of acid freeness. It is a stable metal. I'm sure a chemist will correct me on that. But I did ask a few people, and then what's actually touching the book and nothing's touching the book. Leather is touching the book. It's paper either side, so there's lots of layers of acid-free paper against the leather and the stone. So the aluminium is quite contained within a lot of layers of other stuff.
And how did you attach aluminum and paper?
EVA.
PVA. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
It
This
seems
works.
pretty stable.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
tested it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just was interesting to know. So
Yeah, I'm not. You might be able to. Not. I'm not a great technical nerd geek about these things.
no worries. So what are the future plans for this binding? Should we talk about this to you or maybe to Ian? How
You
should
maybe talk to Ian. We're waiting for Taylor Swift to turn up and say, "I'll have it." That's next.
That's the plan.
But that's the plan. But no, it's here at New York. It's the best fair, and this is where it should be. So I'm very, very grateful to Ian for allowing it to come and be on his stand. He's also got some incredible other stuff on here. Maybe I should hand you over to him, and he could show you around the booth. And unless
Yeah.
you got more.
I still want to ask you one question. How
I may intervene just a little bit. I wanted to address to our viewers once again. If you have any questions, either to Kate or to Ian, please post them. And we still have some time, until the end of our live stream. So even while Kate will pass the camera to Ian in a moment, we'll be able to return to Kate hopefully a bit later if we have any questions for her. So I hope we'll return to Kate anyway. So
Not going
please,
anywhere yet.
please post your comments and thoughts. And Pasha, sorry for the interruption.
It's okay. I want to ask you, what's it like to be at the center of such a media attention? I mean, it's not every day that a bookbinder.
That's why I'm wearing sunglasses in case I get recognized.
A very, very New York look, I know. But I mean, a bookbinding being featured in Vogue, must be surreal.
That was sort of the point of the exercise, really, was to get the mainstream media to take notice of contemporary bookbinding and to do something really quite over the top, because that's what gets people excited. So we've had coverage in Vogue, Financial Times, Robb Report, Forbes magazine, quintessentially, and it's just crazy. It's a BBC. I was on the BBC a couple of nights ago being interviewed. You're like, you can't believe it. It's just, I'm just a bookbinder. This is not normal day to day. But so it's fun, it's exciting. I'm milking it. And yeah, I will be wearing shades from now on.
Good. Nice. David Hennington posted, I was an apprentice at Sangorsky and Sutcliffe in the 50s.
Okay, do you know how they did the dual bindings then, David?
Now we have somebody to ask these questions. So, should we switch to Ian?
I think switch to Ian, and he can give you a tour of his treasures.
Yeah, that would be great.
All right.
Ian.
You hear me?
We can hear Ian, yeah, but...
Okay. I assume you'd rather see books than me, so I thought we would do it this way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Is there anything in particular you would like to see?
Could you perhaps turn your...
that's fine, Pasha.
Oh, it's fine?
Hang on one sec.
Okay, it's fine.
Kate?
I give Ian my laptop.
No. I'm on this. Just turn the volume down on yours, Kate.
Okay.
And we can see Kate standing there.
Because that's Kate in the background.
Yeah.
Is there anything in particular you'd like to start with?
I saw that you have... I saw this bloody binding. What was it? Richard Minsky's binding?
I think what you're doing now.
Well, anyway, I saw several. I think there also was a binding with the Psych Ward's shirt. Was it that? Was it?
Who's binding?
I think it was Dan Kelm's binding or not with the.
Which of Dan's?
Yeah, the left one.
These are all Dan.
Yeah, the one on the left, with the on top shelf. That's the how you call it, the Psych Ward shirt, how you restrictive shirt or whatever. I think we discussed this binding with Dan during our talk with him, and that there was an interesting story behind it. But anyway, show us what are your favorite bindings here in your booth right now.
Well, this would definitely be one of them. This is Surplus Value, Rick Moody's book, and Dan Kelm's binding. He designed the straitjacket as well, etc. Whole thing has to do with it revolves around the book trade. And the full title is Surplus Value Books, catalog number 13. And it's basically a bookseller's manuscript complete with corrections. And during the course of it, he's sort of, his wife is leaving him. He's getting more and more, shall we say, mentally, emotionally fragile. And his descriptions and his pricing gets increasingly unpredictable as the work moves on. It's an exceptional piece in a whole bunch of ways, and particularly kind of funny if one loves binding and bookselling rather.
And Pasha, sorry, Ian. Pasha, if you can post a link to our talk with Dan Kelm, that would be nice, because Dan showed this binding in lots of details, opened it up, and showed the insights and everything, and talked about it and some other bindings.
And while I do that, and could you perhaps show the binding with Mandelbrot on the cover? Is it the fractal geometry of nature? This one, yeah.
This is actually, it's also a Dan Kelm work. It is 43D, which was the book he did in collaboration with Robin Price. He did this, I want to say around early-ish 2000s, around 2009. And the binding is quite complex, and it sort of revolves around, there's a river that runs through it, if you will. And it opens to about, I want to say 3.5 feet, just the binding.
Okay.
Multi-layers and there's a lot going on. This is also Dan's, and a really kind of remarkable, one of my benchmarks tends to be that a book, quote unquote, needs to have words. And there is a small pamphlet that sort of contextualizes it. This is Religio Mathematica. But the book itself is this work, is this cube that one can take out and manipulate in a bunch of ways. And I'll actually, if you don't mind, I will, because it's the best summary, Mark Dimunation, the now retired head of Rare Books at the Library of Congress, sort of generally shared my desire that artist books sort of should have text, but exceptions define the rule. And he said of this piece, the power of Kelm's symbolic universe is most poetically yielded by a pure book structure, free of encumbering text. Religio Mathematica, is a structure built with hinged triangular shapes. Using the 4 alchemical colors as its only source of language, the structure uses the revelation of the colors to create the text, which is confined in the folded shape. The book begins to unfold into a cube, only red is exposed. It unfolds into linked pyramids of white, black, water, and earth. Further sequence unfolds the alchemical story that is exclusive to Kelm's world and vision. When Kelm manipulates the book, it seems like a snake shifting from one shape to another. To hear him recite the incantation of the book is magical. The unfolding of the cube marks the birth of the universe. The ultimate closing of the lotus signals its death. I did not add to that in my description of this piece, because what can one really say? It's an elegant and interesting piece that sort of challenges the ideas of what a book is. on the alchemical front, and just because it's here, this is a spread from Tim Ely's Bones of a Book, arguably kind of one of his monumental works.
And that's something we also discussed on our podcast a while ago with when you were our guest.
That's right.
So that's also something people, our viewers can get more information about if they look for this talk we had with Ian a while ago. Sorry, Ian. I just had to.
No worries. Just as a lot of this is focused on bindings, I thought I'd go through this quickly. This case, bindings by Colin Urbina, a lot of North Bennett Street represented in the case. Don Glaser, sorry, things have been tipped over. Deb Thompson up here. This whole shelf is Sam Feinstein, including this remarkable three-dimensional one that slays me every time I look at it.
This is absolutely amazing.
This beautiful little piece. This is a miniature on Goddard. It is bound in meteorite.
It doesn't want to focus somehow. Yeah.
Well, it's hard. It's gray. It has a crystalline structure because it's cut meteorite. It's bound in meteorite. Brockman bindings. That's another Glaser. Richard Minsky's binding on It Can't Happen Here.
Yeah.
Another binding by Kate Holland, which I happen to love, on the art of bundling, which she found in Old Goat, which is very funny. The spots, the sort of gilted spots were actually lesions in the skin. Peter Thielen and Laura Waite. Gabby Cooksey. This is actually an interesting collaborative binding. Nate McCall did the gilt work, but the spine is a tattooed binding by Gabby Cooksey. Scott Brockman.
So that's sort of continuation of that process and idea that was implemented during the bindings for I'm blanking on the
Dark Archives.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's also
binding.
something we discussed before. So
it is.
Yeah.
It is indeed. This is Gavin Dovey's binding on Leonard Baskin's book with James Baldwin, originally meant as a collaboration, but he died unfortunately early in the process, so it became a sort of memorial. The eyes in this leather binding are Baldwin's. New binding by Colleen Curry, Angela James, Aaron Fletcher, etc.
So Aaron Fletcher, would it be some binding with embroidery or something, or?
That one, it's often embroidery. The two things she does extraordinarily well are embroidered leather bindings and stone veneers.
Oh, okay.
And I have work that represents both forms. Little bit of something other than binding. This is actually the insert. This is the original art by Pettibon for the insert that came if you bought one of the first several hundred albums of Black Flag's My War, which was the first album after they were enjoined from using the name by Unicorn Records. This is a Margot St. James piece, original art, done for her birthday by the rather exceptional female cartoonist Trina Robbins. Just because if you can talk about serial killers, why not? David Berkowitz, who's the best known as the Son of Sam killer, he blamed his killing spree on a book called The Anatomy of Witchcraft. This is David Berkowitz's copy of Anatomy of Witchcraft, with his marginalia and alterations to the text. Right next to
Suddenly it got dark
a
really fast.
1920s. Well, and then on the other side, we have a Bakelite. This is a Bakelite condom packaging,
Yeah.
1920s condoms, because why not?
Yeah,
Here's an interesting
I
one for
saw
you
you posted
guys.
you posted them on Facebook. So that's, by the
I
way,
did.
a good cue for our viewers. If you are interested in different strange and interesting and amazing objects, bookish and not only, please follow Ian on Facebook or Lux Mantis on Instagram. Please do that, and you always be you always find some interesting stuff almost daily.
Well, I thought this, I hope, will resonate particularly with you for obvious reasons. This fabulous little piece, which I have known about for many, many years, but have never actually seen a copy. This purports to be published in, it appears to be a Russian imprint. It was in fact printed in Germany to be smuggled into Russia, late 1800s, very early 1900s. It is simultaneously blasphemous, erotic, and blasphemous, designed to basically be subversive, shall we say. The whole thing revolves around God, Gabriel, and Lucifer, all having, shall we say, conjugal relations with Mary, which includes the wonderful line, together in a single, Mary reflecting on her day, together in a single day, I've had the devil, one archangel, and the Lord. The beauty of it is, it was written by Pushkin. This was after he had been exiled the first time, and he was forced by the Tsar to admit to having done this, or face another exile. It's really, it's kind of, it's almost a white whale on the subversive printing, if you will. I've, in 10 or 12 years of knowing about it, I'd never seen a copy on the market. So I'm ecstatic to have found one. Wonderful bit. This is the dedicatee copy by Michael Laurie to his partner. This is an early homoerotic piece, 1949. His love was a gentleman named Julian, who is actually the image on the cover, and his inscription in this book is exquisite, and he sort of hand illuminated the text for his love, who was the origin. Wonderful little tissue. These look black and white when they don't have light through them, and color when they do is fascinating. Salem witch trial piece. This is a manuscript from the Sanderson family, who were in the center, if you will, of the Salem witch trials. We've talked about before, book bound in human skin, 1682.
What's your opinion on all this drama around human skin binding being debound and
destroyed?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
And buried.
I have thoughts. I will put it this way. Many, many years ago, Oxford University, wanting to put a roof on a building or something, Oxford University librarians decided that because they had a second folio of Shakespeare, they didn't need the older, less good first folio that they had. So they sold it. And many years later, it came back to auction at Sotheby's, and Sir William Osler of circulation fame and the like, was a professor at Oxford at the time, and he spearheaded the effort for Oxford to buy back their first folio that they had foolishly deaccessioned. And they were able to do that because it wasn't destroyed. I personally feel rather strongly that what Harvard has done is every bit as kind of short-sighted and not exact. I'm sure it was well considered, but I suggest poorly considered. And the net result is it's resulted in the destruction of the object, which is to say it can't be undone. You know, unlike the sale of the first folio, which they were able to buy back, when and if they decide that destroying this binding was in fact an unfortunate decision, there's no undoing it. And I think that's quite tragic. I think we have a tendency broadly to apply modern sensitivities to historic objects, and I think it's almost always a problem. I suggest that particular object, which is one of the more problematic skin bindings, absolutely, but it was more valuable as a catalyst to discuss and explore those issues as a complete object than the now, you know, desiccated remains of the book. It was a mistake.
It also a bit surprises, but not surprises me that I think that one of the reasons is that there is this sacred feeling about human skin somehow. And there are so many, you know, heads, skulls, and other pieces of human bodies stored in museums all over the world. But then suddenly, when there is a human skin binding, we need to promptly destroy it and, you know, do something, bury the skin on whatever. This is looks a bit strange, and
I completely agree. You know, again, this is a modern sensitivities issue. We are very fond of thinking that we're very special. We also now have a much, I suggest, a much more uncomfortable relationship with death and you know and what happens after we die than perhaps it was historically accurate. Or was historically applied, and sort of taking those really constructs in terms of how special our skin is versus, say, a calf or a sheep. You know, there's it's not unreasonable to say that you are completely, you are well bound in leather right now. You know, your leather simply hasn't been processed or tanned in a way that will keep it fresh and useful forever. You know, I appreciate why some people are uncomfortable with the use of human remains in any number of ways. The flip side is, as long as you can contextualize it, and acknowledging the fact that there were certainly, in certain circumstances, there were certainly consent issues that are involved. But those issues notwithstanding, they are interesting and arguably important objects, both historic and there are a handful of modern examples, and there are certainly some young binders who would be very willing to create a modern skin book were they to be given the material to do so. We'll see about that in the not too distant future. Again, you know, it boils down to choices one makes, and sometimes it's the individual choice, directly or indirectly. If you consider historic criminal trials bound in the skin of an executed prisoner, you know, the state owns the body. That decision to bind a trial transcript is theirs to make. And one could say the criminal made the decision to forfeit their decision making when they killed someone. in the modern sense, there are certainly, I mean, I have had people with, for instance, large back pieces who have touched base with me about what would be involved in having something bound in their back piece after their death. So I've had 2 or 3 people touch base with me on around that issue. They're all in their 30s or so, so it's unlikely we'll see them dead anytime soon. But one never knows. You know, hope springs eternal, or something like that.
Well,
Kate
anyway,
is chuckling in the background.
I'm glad that it sort of started the discussion. And again, as with the binding of Breakfast at Tiffany's, it's sort of attracts attention to bookbinding in general, and tangentially at least. But still, yeah, the decision. Well, we'll see how it goes.
You know, Kate summed that up the best, I think, which is to say, whether it, you know, when and whether it sells, what it has done is catalyze discussion and recognition of book arts, artist books, design bindings in venues where I would safely say such things have never been discussed. And I you know, part of my desire to help them put this as forward facing as possible is that you know, I spend a tremendous amount of my time representing the work of modern design bindings and book artists, design binders and book artists, and I can say, you know, with absolute certainty that while I've had some nice press coverage on other pieces now and then, you know, there has never been the kind of media attention that this piece has captured, and no matter what happens, it's been profoundly successful in that regard.
Good. Do you have time to show some other books, some other bindings from your booth? Would you
Bindings?
like to do that?
Sure. Hang on one sec. Let me see about spinning the camera again. Is there a particular binding or binder you're interested in?
I would like to see Richard Minsky's binding a bit closer and to hear you talk about it.
So when Donald Trump was elected president, Richard Minsky undertook creating actually a few iterations of this binding on It Can't Happen Here. For those who don't know, It Can't Happen Here is a book that, excuse me, is a book that revolves around a fascist taking over the government of the United States, and part and parcel to it, a sort of critical scene is one in which a printer who had been publishing what the government considered subversive material was murdered in his print shop. And there's, as I recall, there is actually a description of the type in a pool of his blood. And clearly that's what Minsky, you know, that's what Minsky has done in this binding, is this is all, you know, actual, this is lead type, mounted and resting in a pool of blood. It's worth noting that Richard did include some of his own blood. There, you know, there is biomass in that particular binding.
Of course he did. Hopefully he's not
Of course he
preparing
did.
for a second edition.
He made, I think he made at
sorry,
least
Ian.
3 of them.
We discussed this with Richard a while ago, and he mentioned that he was a bit upset that when he saw that the acrylic blood, which is mostly the acrylic paint there used as blood, wouldn't fade out, but the real blood, his own that he put on this binding,
Turns brown.
It turns brown. So yeah.
Yep. Little things. hypothetically, I use a fountain pen ink that is specifically designed to look like dried blood, as one does. This is a beautiful binding. New binding by Colleen Curry on Gaylord Shellack's bokeh. And I'm not sure the camera will capture it, but the gilt reflects in this binding in a simply spectacular way. It's just a beautiful book in hand. Really lovely.
It looks like an old master painting. It's amazing.
It does. It does. Another one that I love in hand is this Stuart Brockman binding. This is back painted vellum.
Okay.
And it is one of, having handled many books, it is one of the most pleasing books in your hands that I've ever seen.
We discussed.
It's actually one of the very few bindings where I don't actually want to sell it, because I am selfishly in love with it.
Pasha, do you
This
remember,
is an interesting piece, not a binding.
I'm sorry, Ian.
Oh, sure.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
Ian. I'll interrupt you once again. We definitely discussed back painted vellum with somebody on our live stream on our podcast before. I don't remember with whom, because it's an interesting technique, and yeah.
Perhaps we could talk to Colin Curry. That would be nice.
That would be absolutely. This is I think a really interesting thing. Katagami is the technique of printing, Japanese technique of printing ink on textile. And these stencils, is through glass there, maybe that's a little better. These stencils are actually paper. And over a period of as long as 2 years, they are dipped in, they're made from the bulk of mulberry trees, pounded flat, so to speak, cut, and then dipped in persimmon juice and dried repeatedly. And what you end up with after, again, as much as 2 years, is what is effectively a paper stencil that will stand up to thousands of uses. And this book was created by some gentlemen in Scotland who happened to, their paper dealers. They deal almost exclusively in historic papers.
Is it
in the course of their
paper
business,
core?
Yes, indeed.
We hope to have them on our live stream at some moment. At least we started the discussion, and
I am happy to help facilitate that.
Please do that, because we started talking. But yeah, anyway.
Sure. Well, this book is all printed cyanotype, and they are all from these stencils, and each of I think it's an edition of 7. Includes one of the 12, includes one of the original stencils, and then several hundred 112 printed examples. So for instance, with this stencil you end up with this as a textile print, and they're fascinating. It's beautiful.
Interesting. I just sold an 17th century ledger with, well, obviously a 17th century handmade laid paper to a vintage paper company, and
oh really?
Yeah, it was a fun sale, because it was the most expensive book sale for me, but obviously it's. I guess it's worth much more because of the paper that's inside of this ledger, and it's a blank ledger, so.
Yeah. This is all the work of Sarah Press. Her press, Deeply Game. Absolutely brilliant young book artist. Often works in collaboration with another wonderful book artist named Tiana Kron. Mindy Bellhoff's, let me get the glass out of it. This is Mindy Bellhoff's Golden Thread. which is, she would be an interesting one for you guys to talk to at some point. This is really an absolutely exquisite combination of design and printing, all at Mindy's hand. She's really, she is an exquisite painter who more people should be aware of just how good she is. And she's, in my not remotely humble opinion, she's one of the more underrated printers out there. Her work is really shockingly good. More Dan Kelm bindings. You mentioned David Esselmont. This is a unique Esselmont binding. This was a collaborative work he did with Gaylord Chenelac. Ink on the Elbow, which comes with a suite of plates, and this one-off painted binding that David executed. Wonderful new little book, and by new I mean I picked it up earlier today. This is a South American book artist and binder, one-off piece in which she basically explores the color black. And if you can see, there's a cut paper form element.
Yeah.
And if you expand it out, it actually, the cut forms form the word black. There's embroidered elements, cut paper. This is, for instance, embroidery, black thread on black paper.
Interesting.
It's really, like, every now and then you run across something that you take it and you flip through it and you immediately think, well, that's quite exceptional. And this falls squarely into that camp. It's really a remarkably, there is a great deal going on.
I know that feeling.
Very simple form.
I know that feeling, but I still have to get to that point where I'd be able to, not only see and understand that it's exceptional, but also to buy
it. Well, the punchline is, trust your gut is my useless advice. I am forever convinced that if you're holding something that for one reason or another resonates, chances are you'll be able to contextualize it such that others will find it interesting too. Speaking of interesting, these are books by Michael and Catherine Russum, Catran Press. They don't do much anymore. Unfortunately, he's sort of shifted his focus away from, shall we say, bespoke books to more democratic printing. But these are two of what were known as his smoke books. This is A Year in the Smoke, which included a lovely poem, Robin Barber, and then, each copy of this book, and this was an edition of 35, had a unique image, because each of the images with a copy is created with smoke. Hence the term smoke book. And then Match in a Bottle, which has one of my favorite bindings from all time. Similarly, every image in the book is effectively a one-off. So this is the frontispiece of each edition has this bottle image, but no two are alike because the image is created using smoke each time. Guilt under smoke. There's nothing about this book that I don't absolutely love. It's a remarkably challenging way to produce art, if you will. And the idea, on one hand, their editions. Match in a Bottle was actually an edition of 65, So there are 65 copies of this book, but at the same time, you know, there is certainly an argument to be made that an editioned book, each of the copies are identical. And there's an argument that, Match in a Bottle is less an edition of 65 than it is a series of 65 unique works that happen to share a title.
Collect them all and exhibit together.
Another book artist who I would strongly encourage you to reach out to is Michael Kutch. He is a fascinating and talented artist and printer. This is Fossil Dirigibles. This is a Sphinx. And then up top we have Common Monsters of the United States. He was Leonard Baskin's last apprentice, and was actually the one who printed. Leonard produced 3 books when he knew he was dying. He produced all of the contents for 3 books, but did not print them. And it was Michael Kutch who printed the 3 posthumous Baskin books, while also going out on his own. Fossil Dirigibles, for example, this really quite exquisite plate is mounted on the front. I should mention that this book is meant to be horizontal, and the only reason it's being displayed this way is I couldn't make it work correctly, if you will, mounted horizontally in this case. Anything else? Oh, actually, one last thing that people might find interesting. There's a rather famous book called Costumes, Civilian and Military, 1600 to 1820, by a French artist named Hippolyte Lecomte. And it's relatively challenging to find it complete. It's 4-volume set. This is full 4 volumes, but what sets it apart is that it is accompanied with a lovely little vellum set of 286 of Hippolyte Lecomte's original pen sketches. So this is the original art upon which lithographers would copy to create this, along with his color. He made color recommendations, which you can see vertically on a couple of the pieces here. But when if you really look at his design and its replication in litho, I find it incredibly hard to get my head around just how talented these lithographers were at scaling and duplicating work. When you look at a detail like the head and hand of this figure and carry it up to how it was duplicated, and duplicated by hand. It's absolutely remarkable. That, by the way, this piece came to me having been my client when she was 11 years old told her mother that she was interested in being in fashion design. And as sometimes happens, her mother set a half dozen European book dealers to find interesting things for her daughter. So part of the history of this that I happen to love is that this remarkable set of Hippolyte Lecomte's books and his original sketches were a birthday gift for a 12-year-old.
Well,
we should all have parents like
this. That's a great story, yeah, and great attitude towards your kids.
Little things.
Thank you, Ian, for showing all of this stuff. That's as usual. It's amazing, and it's great to see all of these bindings. And I really hope that we'll have more time with you in the future to talk about some more amazing bindings and some more amazing books. Would it be possible to talk about the fair itself, how it goes? Because I'm sure that
Sure.
among our current viewers and among our future viewers, there are people who have never been to a book fair or an antiquarian book fair or to New York. But I never been to New York Book Fair, by the way. I hope to be there in the future,
Sure.
but not yet. So how does it usually work if somebody wants to buy a book from you? Do you usually keep the book until the end of the fair to exhibit it? What are the small
That's
things?
interesting question. The short answer is it depends, and there are a few variables that come into play. Notably, particularly with book artists, I'm often I'm representing the edition, if you will. So oftentimes I'll only have one copy here. So if it sells, yes, it stays here, and we we ship other copies after the fair is done. At least as often, and probably more so, particularly with institutional clients, but also private. When we sell something, they don't want to leave with it. Either they've flown in, they're flying back, or sometimes it's simply volumetrically challenging.
Yeah.
I probably deal in too many large, heavy books. But I would say probably 4 out of 5 things that we sell end up being shipped after the fact for one reason or another. But it's
sorry,
been, and I think that's the case for most people here.
Ian, I have one question I really
Sure.
wanted to ask you. Is there any bargaining involved? I mean, could someone say, I love it so much, but what if I take 2 of those?
So the answer is yes, or rather maybe yes or no. It depends on, or it depends. It depends on the dealer. It depends on the item. In part because a lot of the material I represent is exactly that. I am representing the artist. We have agreed on a price, and as a rule, that is the price to the market. I don't have the leeway, or if I have leeway, it's simply in the form of a relatively minor institutional discount. When it's items that one owns outright, arguably you have more wiggle room. Some people love negotiating. I personally, I tend to think that it's better for the market if one prices things fairly and sticks to what they think is fair. When you're willing to negotiate on everything one sells, what you're basically saying is all of your pricing was kind of off the top of their head, and one shouldn't trust the value that's being attached to things. I think that's not necessarily healthy. The flip side is, I've had clients who they have to negotiate everything. It's like part and parcel to their being. I have one client in particular, and he's an old family friend, and I was able to be very overt with him, to the effect that I told him at one point, that I increased the price to you before I quoted because I know you want X amount off. And he's like, yeah, no, I know, but I have to do it. And so there is this there's this kind of weird give and take sometimes. And you get to learn, your client's needs, so to speak. As a rule, however, I think it's best for the market if a price is what the price should be. And sometimes when someone's buying a number of things, maybe there's a little bit more wiggle room. Now the exception is there are times when, well, for instance, a fair bit of what I deal in, are things like, a 1910 French stationer's example book. So it's basically a scrapbook made up of exceptional little French stationery pieces. Each one of them hand colored by teenage French girls with single bristle brushes, kind of work. And the one I'm specifically thinking about, the ease at which an ephemera dealer could have cut the spine off that and sold each leaf for $150. It's effortless to do that. And yet the piece as a whole is much more important. And it's a challenge for a bookseller, because if I price it to prevent, above the value of its insular parts, you end up with a price that's irrational. Same thing can be said for something like not Pearson's Varieties. I'm blanking on it. It's a French botanical with about 287 hand painted botanical prints. And the dilemma there is, individually, the prints sell for $75 to $250 a piece. If you take a sort of average of, let's say, $200 and multiply that by 287, you end up with a ridiculously high number for the set.
Ian, sorry, could you please ask Kate to open her laptop, because she just
she
just broke our theme.
No. She
I'm not
warned
sure
us
it'll
in
recover.
the chat that she has to leave.
Okay.
Yeah, she said she had to leave. She's shut down Zoom, so I'm not sure it's recoverable.
Yeah, okay. No worries. I'll try to do something.
He's right
about
here.
It.
Well, but my punchline is to what I was saying. That stationer's book, I priced that at $7,500. See you later. I priced that at $7,500 so that it wouldn't sell to anyone who was going to cut it apart.
Yeah.
But I was waiting for the right person, and this woman, elderly woman, came, looked at it repeatedly, and ultimately I got talking to her, and she had worked for Cranes for many years, starting as a secretary, ending up as a VP, and she loved it, but it was very expensive for her, etc. And suffice it to say, I ended up selling it to her for a fraction of what I was asking. Not almost exclusively because it was the right home for it. So sometimes hang on just one sec, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think we're like this far. Sorry, the booth is busy. I should show you. I'm surreptitiously trying to do this with you guys while people wander through the booth at the same time, which is
perhaps you could answer just one more question before we let you go.
Two, because I also have a question.
Last time we talked, you mentioned that you usually have something on the cheaper side for the entry-level buyers.
Sure.
Is there anything you could show us like that now?
Well, sure. And it depends a little on, define less expensive. There are some sort of either younger book artists whose work isn't quite as elaborate, perhaps. That can be a few $100s. We certainly have a fair bit of sort of esoterica, occult and otherwise, that can be here in the booth as little as, say, $50 or so. It's challenging at a fair like this to have, we always strive to have some material under $100. But, this is a fair where the fixed cost is so high that it's very challenging to sell, to have anything here that doesn't, if you will, justify its place on a shelf. When the overhead on a show is on the order of $30,000, you if you're going to have $50 and $100 items, if you were going to try and do $50 and $100 items across the board, you would have to sell, stunning numbers of them to come close to break even. Anything else?
Yeah, I had one more question, and there are some comments there. I'm sorry, I wouldn't be able to read them all because we're getting close to the end. I wanted to invite everybody to check the description to follow our social accounts and find Ian's account on Instagram, Lux Mantis, his projects, his book selling projects account, and follow all of that. I had just a small question. As you represent book artists who sometimes do editions, do you try to accommodate people who come to you and ask you, I want this specific number of copy, number of copy of the book, for example, number 13, or do you sell them, consequently?
Yeah, no, there are certainly people who want specific numbers. I have some, Jamie Murphy in Dublin, Ireland. Pretty much every book he's done in the last 5 or 10 years, I end up with IJK. He does lettered editions. My initials are IJK. So he ships me IJK.
Interesting. Nice.
I should go. I apologize,
Thank
but I
you.
really
No
don't.
worries. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot
Thank
for
you
being with
so
us.
much.
And
You bet.
Have a good day.
See you.
So I wouldn't even switch I probably have to switch the scene because
You have to now.
yeah. It broke it broke broke completely and
So
yeah,
that was exciting.
that was exciting and nice talk. Thanks everybody for being with us today, and thanks everybody for the comments and well, some questions as well. We definitely will return to both to Ian and Kate in the future to talk more about rare books, book sales, and bookbinding. Next week we are talking about copyright in book arts and bookbinding with our researcher Friedrich Sommerfeld. He prepared a lot of material for that, so please join us. It should be interesting. In 2 weeks, in 2 weeks' time, what else do we have? We will have a short break at the beginning of May, right, Pasha?
Yeah, I'll be traveling.
We'll take a two week break, so there will be no live streams for 2 weeks. Then on the what's that? It's 13th. Then on the 20th of April, we'll have Nicolene Meyer and Richard Minsky. Nicolene bought out Richard's workshop, Richard's studio, and we just wanted to discuss this because it's interesting how one bookbinder buys out a different bookbinder's business practice and tradition, I guess. So yeah, there will be more interesting talks on our live stream this April. We will return later in May, and we probably will have Jorge Lar, a Portuguese bookbinder who lives in Denmark. Not bookbinder, a Portuguese printer who lives in Denmark. We had recorded a podcast with him that was never published, and we still hope to publish it at some moment in the future. But we decided that we will invite him to our live stream, to compensate some of his efforts and time that he spent with us recording the previous podcast. So please subscribe to our social accounts. There will be a lot of interesting things coming. We have some other things planned, so stay tuned. thanks for being with us today. Thanks everyone for comments and questions, and see you in a week, I hope. Pasha,
Bye.
as usual, we stay for a bit longer and wait until the stream drops, but that's